We still want to remember to follow the order of operations. So it applies even when we're working in the world of fractions. So we have parentheses or grouping symbols. Grouping symbols. We have exponents, we have multiplication and division, and then finally adding and subtracting. So I usually write it like that as an abbreviation. So there we go. Now, we've been working with some negative fractions, but I want to talk a little bit about how we write it. So a lot of times in the textbooks, they'll write negative 3/4, say. So negative 3/4, and they'll put the negative sign out to the side. You have to be careful that it doesn't look like it's part of the division bar or the fraction bar. Or you could write it with a negative in the numerator. So this would be the same fraction. Those two would be equivalent. Usually we write it one of those two ways, where we either put the negative out to the side or we put the negative sign in the numerator. You have to be careful because sometimes the numerator has more than one term. But just, your basic fractions here, this is what we're talking about. But you can also put the negative sign in the denominator. So it's not quite as common, but you can write it that way. Usually, like on a test, I would want to see one of these first two, either out to the side or put the negative sign in the numerator. But those three ways of writing it are all equal. They're all equivalent. Okay, so now we have some examples where we have the order of operations, and this will be exciting. Okay, so example 7. We've got a numerator, we're going to have to do some work there, and we've got a denominator, we're going to have to do some work there. So 8 times negative 2, that's a negative 16. I'm doing the multiplication in the numerator, plus, and then 4 times negative 3 is going to be negative 12. Okay, so that's what I have in the numerator so far. In the denominator, I've got to do that multiplication, so I'm going to have a negative 10, negative 5 times 2, plus 3. Now I'll need to do the adding in the numerator, so I'm going to get negative 28. It's a negative 16 plus a negative 12. And then in the denominator, I've got negative 10 plus 3, which is going to be negative 7. Okay, it turns out in this example that we have a negative divided by a negative, so it's positive. Even if this didn't simplify more, we would still make sure that we wrote the answer, in this case, as a positive number. But 7 happens to go into 28, so we're going to get 4. The answer is going to be 4 here, positive 4. Always make sure at the end, whether you wanted it positive or negative, that you have the right sign. Okay, so that's that one. That was pretty fun. Okay, so example number 8. So I'm going to go over here, and I have to think, well, what's 1/3 squared? Remember, it's 1/3 times 1/3. Okay, so a lot of mistakes are made sometimes on that part, but 1/3 squared, you're going to go 1/3 times 1/3. In the denominator, you're going to have to go 2 cubed, 2 times 2 times 2. I'll write that out. And then you're going to have to add another 2. Okay, so in the numerator, we're getting 1/9. So when you multiply that 1/3 times 1/3, 1 times 1, and 3 times 3. And then in the denominator, you're going to have 8 plus 2. So 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And then I'm going to have 1/9 over 10. But we're not going to leave it that way because that is a complex fraction, and so we need to simplify it. So I'm going to make the 10, put it 10 over 1. And so I'm going to rewrite this as 1/9. And then this is what I usually do, times, and then I reciprocate the bottom. So it's going to be 1/10. So flip that 10 over 1, just flip it over, make it 1/10. And now I can multiply, and my answer is going to be 1/90. So that problem was exciting. I hope you think so. Okay, so it looks like we have a little bit more. On example 9, we've got some addition going on up in the numerator, but I don't have common denominators. So the common denominator is going to be 6. So I'm going to multiply by 2 here. I'm going to multiply by 3 here. And in the denominator, the common denominator will be 12. So I'm going to multiply by 4 here. Oh, no, I'm not. Dang it. Let me get those 4's out of there. Let's multiply by 3. And then in this denominator, I'll multiply by 4. Okay, so I kind of have a lot going on there, but let's see if we can make sense of it. So in the numerator, I'm going to have 2 over 6 plus 3 over 6. That's the numerator. And then in the denominator, I've got 9 over 12 plus, oh, no, it's not plus, it's minus. Minus 4 over 12. So if you like that, hopefully you can see the numerators doing what they're doing. And 2 over 6, 3 over 6, yeah, I like that. And then in the denominator, 9 over 12, and minus 4 over 12, yeah, I like that. Okay, so now we can go ahead and do the adding. And we're going to get, where do I want to write it? 5 over 6, that'll be in the numerator. And then in the denominator, it's going to be 5 over 12, because it was subtraction, so 9 minus 4. And now I'm back to doing that thing where we have to, keep the numerator, 5 over 6, change it to multiplication, and then do the flip, the reciprocal of 5/12, which is going to make it 12 over 5. And then we could actually do some canceling here. Those 5's cancel. And 6 goes into 12 2 times. I don't usually do it that way. I usually do the prime factors, but the answer here is going to be 2. Okay. So that's how that one worked. A lot going on in that problem. But if you can do those, that's really good. Okay. So we've got one more. It's an evaluating problem. So they give us 3ab squared, and then a and b this time are fractions. So we're going to write it as 3 times a, which is negative 2/3, times b, which is negative 1/2, and I have to square b. I'm just squaring the b. Notice that that little exponent of 2 is only on the b. Okay. So there's a couple ways you could do it, but we'll make this 3 times negative 2/3. We'll just copy that down. And then think about what's negative 1/2 times negative 1/2. And sometimes if you're new to this or it's been a while, you might want to write that out, but negative times negative is positive, and then you're going to get 1/4. 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so all I did was the exponent so far, and now I'm looking at some multiplication. I could write this as 3 over 1 times negative 2 over 3 times 1 over 4. And you can put more parentheses in. The tricky thing is, what do you do with that negative sign? Now we have a positive times a negative times a positive. We know the answer is going to be negative. Oops. We know the answer is going to be negative. Those 3's are going to cancel. And that 2, it might be easier. It might be easier, instead of writing it as a negative 2, let's not write it as a negative 2. Let's write it as negative 1 times 2. It's the same thing, and I don't care if you do that or not, but that 2 then could cancel into that 4, and you get a 2, or you can break 4 into 2 times 2. So in the numerator, I have 1. You might say, well, it's negative. Remember, my whole answer here is going to be negative. So I get, well, that doesn't look very neat, but it's negative 1/2. Okay.